So that's
Okay, we're going to get started here in 1 minute. So everybody check their cell phones. You know the drill. Okay. Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Okay, this is Barberton City Council. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. It is Monday, September 20th, 21. Before we go into our committee of the whole meeting, we will do individual committees. We have 4 of them tonight. First up is Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring to order Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting. Today is September 20th, 2021. It is 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. All members of committee are present, council members are present, and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, there is no request for legislation currently. Miscellaneous discussion, just a few things. AMATS projects, this is an update that all council members got via email, by the way, from the mayor. AMATS construction projects are continuing and wrapping up. And there's a lot of construction going on. Side road work is still happening, and there's still a lot of concrete work. Mrs. Angeloff was just talking about Norton Avenue was done, which looks good. I don't think it's striped yet or painted yet, but it's
true.
Is it?
Yes.
But it's, all the roads are starting to come together, but we still have a long way to go. Mr. Tracy, I see you in the gallery. Is there anything that you want to provide the council as far as streets and what's going on? Any
Sure.
hiccups?
So the AMAS projects, Norton Avenue, Worcester Road North, and 2nd Street Southwest. The surface course was just recently applied, so the actual asphalt is completed. The pavement markings that you see at the current time are temporary pavement markings. They are in the permanent locations, but those are just paint with retroreflective beads. In the near future, they'll be putting down the thermoplastic pavement markings, which will last for a number of years. And so currently they're working on the finishing concrete work, finishing up some sidewalks and curbing, and also we'll be doing utility adjustments. The pavement markings, the final pavement markings will be the last portion of the project. As far as the 2021 road program goes, today North Summit Street was surfaced, both intermediate course and surface course, and 7th Street and Jefferson were both given an intermediate course layer today. I'm not sure parents' schedule this week because of the rain, so they're kind of playing it by ear to see what this rain's going to do. We are expecting some heavy rains Tuesday into Wednesday. So they also still have a little bit of concrete work to do, but we're still sitting around 90-95% of the concrete work being done. Once they do all the surface course work, then they'll come through and do the utility adjustments as well. And then there's always a punch list that we go through at the end. Things are moving along.
Awesome. You mentioned the road markings. This was before I was on council. The Worcester Road, Robinson Bridge. Did you guys ever get a chance to look at that? The markings? Is it painted?
Mm-hmm.
I haven't.
Yeah, we painted this year.
Okay.
We did all the long line painting in the intersection of Worcester, Robinson, and 2nd Street in there.
Awesome.
And up to 3rd Street.
That's probably why I haven't had any complaints.
I've asked for it for 3 years, so I had that. So.
And those were all just
I was real happy.
paint with retroreflective beads.
Yeah.
Because in anticipation that next year, then the Worcester Robinson AMS project is going to take place. So,
Okay.
that project will then be followed up with thermoplastic markings.
Awesome, thank you. Second piece of miscellaneous discussion, Mr. Jaber asked to have a discussion today about possibly looking at the idea or just exploring the idea and talking about it, moving street sweeping to the same night as trash nights. Mr. Jaber, did you want to provide any feedback or your thoughts and explanation behind that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Greer. I had one customer, also a resident in my ward, come in, and my staffman told me they had 4 tickets on Thursday night. They just moved into the neighborhood 3 weeks ago. They have his car, his wife's car, his 2 kids' car, and they all received tickets for parking on Thursday night. So I don't know if we can maybe put on the water bill, put on the water bill about the parking, or we can just communicate better with the residents, and if we can try to switch it over on the same day, I think it would work somehow. Mr. Tracy, I don't know how you feel about that, or is that something we can do possibly?
Yeah, we can look, I mean, we did a press release earlier in the year for street sweeping, but it doesn't hurt to do a reminder notice via social media or maybe something on the water bills about the schedule. There's only so much we can do on the water bill. It's a very tight window, so we can look at some alternatives. But we sweep every night during the week, every weeknight. So as far as shifting things around, that can get a little cumbersome. So there may be something we can do as far as communication goes.
How about changing like the days, same days, trash days? Is that something possible? I mean, it would be for Kimball.
Well, trash days is only 3 days a week, and we sweep 5 nights a week. And it's even hard to get it all done in 5 nights. So I don't know how we would get those to align and not sweep on trash days. It's something we can have further discussion about.
Okay,
Yeah, we'll explore the idea. I'll talk to Mr. Tracy and
thank you.
explore that.
Chairman.
Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. I know in my neighborhood, the street sweeper is Sunday night, which I don't know what kind of wrench that throws into things, being on Sunday night when we're sweeping certain nights. If that, Mr. Tracy, does that put anybody in overtime? Does that put anybody on a different pay scale when they do Sunday nights?
No, so that individual actually starts Sunday night at 11 o'clock at night. So it's most of the shift is Monday, 12 to 7, but it's 11 to 7:30. So, I mean, they're coming in officially on Sunday, but most of the work is done on Monday night. That's
Right, that's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Mr. J. I was just going to ask, what would the thought process be for moving it to the same night as trash, just so everything is on one night?
Yes.
But I'm confused.
Well, that's what I was asking about. So it makes sense, so they know their trash night when they first come. They don't know about the street sweeping.
Right, so we keep it the same night, that way they.
But they still wouldn't know about the street sweeping.
No.
Even if we moved it to trash night.
Again, they just moved into the neighborhood 3-4 weeks ago.
So you would think it would be easier for somebody to remember if they're putting out their trash,
Same day
knowing the
as trash
sweeper's
day.
coming that night as well?
Correct.
Yeah, we can have the discussion. I'll talk to Mr. Tracy.
He has
I know-
a comment.
Mr. Tracy?
Yeah, we have had a number of individuals over the last few months that have come down to the mayor's office after they signed their paperwork as far as new homeowners in the city, people that are moving in. So when they go to utilities, they get a new homeowners packet, and they come down to the mayor's office. They meet myself, the mayor, anyone else who's there that day. I can look and see if that's included in the packet. That's another thing that we can do.
The welcome
Thank you.
packet,
In the welcome packet.
Yeah.
Yeah. The street sweeping schedule in the packet.
yeah, because
Great.
It's in the packet.
I'll tell you change my street sweeping day, I would be lost. It'd take me another
Yeah.
year or two to figure it out.
I think, Sheriff, if I may?
Yes, sir.
I think which is good that we have that packet, but one thing that I don't think people get with that packet is if they move into the city as renters, because I don't think they understand that they're responsible for taking their trash out, most likely by the landlord, but then the landlord doesn't convey to the street sweeper. I think that is, Councilor Jaber, is that kind of what this situation was?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely renters.
Yeah, we'll see if we can't get more information out to renters and everybody. It's a discussion to be had. I'll talk with Mr. Tracy this week, just see if we can just meet. Mrs. Zanzoff?
I think the Sunday, every other Sunday in Austin Estates is like the worst, because I would remember every week if I lived up there, and it's every other Sunday. So
Right.
that's a bit confusing there, so.
Trust me, the south side is that every other, and sometimes I
Yeah.
forget myself which one it is.
Well, we'll work with, I'll get with Mr. Tracy throughout the week and then see what his thoughts are on maybe
notifying people.
reevaluating things are ran. And then I'll have an update for the next committee. Ms. Fry?
I have a question, and Mr. Tracy can probably answer this. The trash pickup and the street sweeping doesn't really coincide. Don't they pick up part of 5 and 6 for trash? I don't know if they do 5 and 6 at the same time for street sweeping.
So I'd have to look. I think right now they're actually purposely separated.
Yeah.
So that you don't have the trash cans on the curb when the street sweeper's sweeping, or else the mirror would hit all the trash cans. So I think right now they're purposely separated because of just the chance of conflict.
It's good to know. Thank you. Is there any miscellaneous discussion about committee? Mr. Heidick?
One last thing, if they're purposely separated, I think if we were able to put the street sweeper, just in a theoretical world, the night following the trash, maybe that would try to encourage people to bring their trash bins in instead of leaving them on the street for a week at a time.
Right.
Hey, any way to fix that, I'm for.
All right. Well, awesome. Thanks for the discussion. Any miscellaneous for Mr. Jaber?
Any new updates on street lighting, like new lights, new bulbs?
I haven't seen any, the updated project. Mr. Tracy, are you aware of First Energy's program, status of their light updates? Like, is that something that they continuously do throughout the year, or is there like a season for changing them?
No, so right now, we're part of the Efficiency Safety Incentive Program, or Electric Safety Incentive Program. It's called ESIP. So with ESIP, we get some extremely good electric rates. Rates that you can't get without being part of ESIP. So we've been part of ESIP for, I want to say, around 20 years. So I worked with First Energy, I think it was late last year into this year, and we were working on an LED conversion plan for all the streetlights. What it boils down to is that converting all the lights at this time actually costs the city more money per month after the conversion is complete than the rate that we have currently. And that is because once you replace the light with an LED, you are now not part of that light is not part of the ESIP program. It goes back to the regular rate, and that rate is so much more than what our current rate is, that the savings from the light doesn't get you savings. So we're looking at alternative options right now.
Mr. Bevick?
I'm over here whispering, I'm sorry. I said, but it does save energy and the environment, so that's another important key. that
Yeah,
we
I was
need to look at.
thinking if that, I'm sorry, what was that program?
The ESIP program is what we're part of.
ESIP?
Yep.
Yeah. And that's what I was thinking, like, well, I know we've been part of it a long time, but what happens if it just stops?
Well, at some
And then
point,
we would move
they probably
forward.
will force people to do it.
Mr. Draper, does that answer?
Yes, thank you.
Some thinking. Is there any other miscellaneous discussion for street, sidewalk, and lighting? Hearing none and seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Fry and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. Street, sidewalk, and lighting is adjourned at 6:12 PM.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services meeting September 20th, 2021. Time is 6:13. All members present. Several council members also noted and present. We have no new request for legislation, and I'll open this up for miscellaneous discussion. All right. Seeing none, motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I will second that.
Mr. Griffin. And Mr. Hardy. And we are adjourned at 6:14. With that, Pastor.
Thank you. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Angeloff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to bring to order the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee meeting. It is Monday, September 20th, It is 6:15 PM, and we're in the council chambers. All members are present, along with guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, we have a legislation request. It's continued from September 7th, 2021. It's a letter from Mr. Thomas Heidig, councilperson at large, requesting legislation to amend ordinance 53-2012 and/or Charter 836.04B, amusement devices, skill-based amusement machines, and arcades. License fee, transfer, and display, to add language at the end of Section B to read, "No new licenses shall be issued effective upon the date passed." He is requesting 3 readings and no emergency language requested. Looking at 3 readings, it would be October 25th, and with no emergency language on it, it would be 30 days after that. I'll open it up for discussion. Please direct your questions to Mr. Heidig or Mrs. Miller on that. Any questions, Mr. Heidig?
Thank you, Chair. I did see the email chain, and I do think your suggestion of, instead of that, just extending the moratorium permanently would be more apt than what's down here. So I do agree with you on that.
Well, I think because, and this, I'm going to say this, and my committee can chime in, because of the time restraints with this, because of the 3 readings, and I'm okay with it saying no new licenses shall be issued, effective date, October 25th. It was wording that Mr. Heidig and Mrs. Miller have agreed to, and it's very simple to read. It's very understandable. So I'm in agreement with that. And we can
Leave it right.
leave it that way. If anybody on the committee has any questions?
I have none.
None? All right. Then, do I have a motion to call for this?
Can I speak real quick?
Okay, Mr. Jaber?
Thank you. Now, Mr. Miller, is there only one property in the city of Barberton that's available for that through zoning right now? That's on State Street?
No, that's not.
That's not available.
That's not available.
I mean, it passes all the zoning, the only thing that doesn't pass is just the neighborhood, or?
May I?
No,
It's
that
the
was
distance
turned down
from-
by,
Distance from a church, I believe it was.
Conditional.
from court back in, I think, 2017 or something,
So
yeah.
if there's no properties available right now, why are we doing this?
Yes.
Is there anything available for this skill games?
Well, it's the zoning part of it. I'm talking just about the zoning part of it. There possibly could be a building, you have to go by what the article says in the zoning, and the zoning is pretty strict. That was the only one that had come in since I was on there might be more, I don't know, because a couple years I wasn't on planning. But that was the one that they wanted to take the building, Sisson's building, and make that an arcade, but with some of the stipulations, which I don't recall, I don't have my notes with me, and I believe that went to common pleas. There was a couple attorneys involved in that in the city, and they were in our favor because of the residential area or something of that sort. Mrs. Miller couldn't explain that. She was part of that meeting. So I don't know if anybody else has applied, and if they did, they have to go by according to the strict zoning codes that we have on that arcades. Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. There are multiple areas that are zoned that they could potentially be. However, those zones, I'm not sure the parameters with distances to churches, bars, parks, etc., would fall within buildings that are in that zoning. But to answer the question, yes, there are zones, not very many, but there are zones that they are allowed. It's just whether their buildings fall within the parameters of distance
Of the
measurements.
zoning, yes,
Mhm.
yeah. It could be any place, but you have to apply, you have to comply with the zoning on that. So you could have a building, and it could be 800 foot away from a school, but our zoning says 1,000 foot. So, so there could be, which, I'm sure there's all over town, but
So what we're doing here is just gonna take away from other businesses who are wanting to come to Barberton. I mean, that's how it looks like from outside.
Well,
Mr. Greer and I were talking about this earlier.
we're not, yes, we are and we're not. We haven't had any new ones. I mean, we've had Treasure Island and the Magic, whatever that is, for a long, long time. Other than the one on the Sisson building, and that was not approved. Now, Mr. Trevor's not here. I don't know if the mayor's here. He might be able to speak. I don't know if we've had any other applications. I'd have to say apparently, if we did,
They're shaking
they
their
did
head
meet
no.
the zoning. They did meet the zoning. Mayor, do you know if we've had any since, any applications or anything?
No.
This just says we're not going to renew them, and it's like we did with the marijuana. We put that in, we don't do marijuana, so people don't come here looking for
Right.
it.
Now, it's just no new licenses. We still have the two that are grandfathered in. Any changes that we make to the hours, to the application fee, to the machine fees, that only affects, that would affect the new, I mean, that would affect the ones that are grandfathered in, but the zoning part of it, that's what this is, that no license is issued. Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Chair. Do we have a plan for this?
A plan?
Do we have a plan for the lost revenue to fill the empty businesses when they go?
We don't have a loss because we don't have any new ones. I mean, you can't
I
say
understand
there's a
for the
loss unless
marijuana
there's
stuff
income
because it's
in.
net income we've never had, but this is income we do have.
Well, that's going to stay unless they
And it
decide to move. The
Could
two of
go
them are
away.
grandfathered in.
Did we get feedback from the planning department?
Yes, yes, we did.
Okay.
Mr. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. I introduced this because residents have asked me time and time again that they're tired of fighting that these businesses come to town. And believe me, I'm all for businesses, but when there's a sect of business, of an industry, that it's made very apparent that our citizenry doesn't want, then I believe it is our duty to follow their will and put something like this in the books. Again, I would love to have every business I could in the city, but when our own people are telling us they're tired of fighting every time one applies, that's just not, that's not in the best interest of the people to ignore those pleas and to constantly make them come down to the planning commission for conditional use permits and voice their opposition, to call their reps, to call the city. It's something that the vast, vast majority of the citizens just do not want. And I represent the people at large. I felt it was my duty to introduce this. So, thank you.
Mr. Greer?
And I respect Mr. Heidick's stance on that. It was just said that we haven't had that much. I reached out to the police department. Our resources are not being spent on this stuff. I don't believe we should be moral police. I don't think the council should ban hammer a business. As that's how I see it. This is just my opinion. And I just don't feel that it's not our place. This wasn't presented by the planning department.
Over here,
Oh, I'm sorry. Mrs. DeBevick?
and then Mrs. Miller.
Mrs. DeBevick?
Yes. So,
I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand till after hers.
Well, he asked.
Okay,
the
Mrs.
question
Miller, go
first.
ahead.
I haven't got a chance to answer.
Okay.
go ahead,
Mrs.
answer his
Miller.
before.
In the 14 years that I've been here, we've had one application. So that's the answer to your question.
Is that because of zoning, correct?
Yes.
No,
Well,
it's because
it's strict zoning.
Wait a
in the
minute.
14 years that I've been here, we've had one application.
Right.
As has been pointed out, they can be located anywhere in the city as long as they meet the zoning.
All right. And right now, they don't meet no zoning except only one address until they fought it and lost
That,
it.
well, they can be located anywhere within the city as long as they meet the zoning requirements.
Right.
So, anywhere in the city they could go as long as they are within the requirements that are set forth in the ordinance.
And right now, there's none. There's none that you can, there's no place in the city of Barberton that fits the requirements for the zoning.
No open building.
Well, I don't know if
I
that's
don't know.
exactly true. There might not be a building located where that meets the zoning
Correct,
requirements.
yes.
But that, to be honest with you, you could build a building where it met the zoning requirements, they're just choosing not to do that.
Again, I'm not for or against the business. I'm not a gambler myself. I just don't want to feel that we have the right to tell a business No.
Well,
I mean, that should be the
but
planning.
Your question was, has there been an application? In the 14 years I've been here,
Right.
there's been one. So in addition to Justin's question is what money are you turning away? We've only ever had one application to start that new business. The income that we will continue to receive from the businesses that are located here that continue to pay the licensing fees that are in the ordinance currently.
Then where is Mr. Heidi coming in and saying that you have multiple businesses? Residents say they don't want this business open up here.
Correct.
Is there multiple businesses that apply?
I didn't say businesses, I said residents.
Just residents?
Yes.
Okay.
And to wit, if I may, Chair,
Go ahead.
if Counselor Jaber's correct and there's only one location and that location was turned down, then really putting this in just saves a potential business owner money, because why would they, if it can't meet the zoning, why would they pay good money and waste their time knowing that they can't meet the zoning? So if what's Counselor Jaber says is true and it's just that one spot and it was denied, then theoretically all we're doing is saving a potential business owner that wants to move here time, money, and effort when he knows he'd be denied anyway.
That also follows through, say if a business closes down, now that property is available and it passes zoning. We're turning another business to come in to the city of Barberton. I mean, again, I'm not for it or against gambling. I don't gamble myself, but I just feel like we shouldn't have the right to tell a business no. I mean, that should be coming through planning or the city administration. If they want to do it, they should do it. We shouldn't be able to do that.
But Mr. Jaber, we do according to zoning.
Ultimately, that
That is
vote would fall on us
zoning.
through, whether planning or the administration wanted to do it, ultimately it would come to our desks.
That's right. Let them bring it to our desk. They haven't. You brought it to the desk.
Yes.
Correct?
Correct.
And you as a councilman, I don't believe you have the right to tell a business no.
According to our council rules, though, any member or anybody in the administration could request for legislation.
Oh, yeah, I respect that. So, I just give you my opinion.
Any other questions from anybody?
I don't have a
Mrs.
question, I
DeVito,
just
I'm
have a
sorry.
statement. So, I was going to say, I thought that Mr. Hunt answered that there was only one in a really long time, last time we had this discussion. And what my thought process in leaving that evening was that this was kind of a moot point. It's apparent that our zoning doesn't work in favor of the skilled gaming. And I kind of agree that I don't necessarily want to be the one to legislate this. If the zoning doesn't work in favor, why should we, I don't think we need to put that in there for this ordinance to be effective. That's my opinion.
Well, and when I was involved in the State Street building, and with what was going through on that, because of the zoning was so strict on that, that was my question. Why didn't we at that point say no more, no more arcade businesses in town? But because this, our zoning is so strict that could prohibit somebody if they're looking at this place and they can't do it this way. But this, like I said, this did not come from me as chair of planning or the, planning director. We did talk to him and he's on board with that. And I think generally most of administration and some council people agree this way you would not get into any other confrontation or any type of lawsuit or anything of that sort. This did not go to the planning commission, but it is, but we can go ahead and do this on council floor. And I'm still working on the other two, the other part of it, the safety part of it, and the other part of the moratorium. So we'll be working on that and probably bringing something to council next month, October, late October, early November. So if there's nothing else, then I guess we'll go ahead, and anybody from the galley have anything to say? No? Yes?
Well, to Mr. Heidick's point, by passing more the legislation, it would save the headache of any business owner looking to bring that business here, because there's a lot of time and effort that goes into the application. Nothing is up to the administration or planning, it's all based on the zoning code. And there are some communities who have outlawed these, lack of a better word, whatever wording they used in their legislation, they have outlawed these. And I know from my experience, when you do meet with a company, that wants to move in here, they do ask about, and they've done their research on what other businesses are in and around where they want to go. So they want, their wording, they want desirable businesses near them, they want to be a part of that. And, but it would alleviate some time and cost on business owners who want to come to town.
And if we haven't had one in 14 years, we still have the income from the other two, which are grandfathered in. Any other questions, concerns, anything? No? Okay. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make the motion to call for it. We can always vote it down.
Mrs. Coburn, first motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Medges, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And nays? Aye. Nays? Mr. Greer? Okay, hearing, so moved. It was 3-1. All right. Pending legislation, thank you. Pending legislation that I have is a zoning map amendment, and this will be, next week will be the second reading. A zoning map amendment on Norton Avenue. And I don't want to read all those codes on there, and I brought the wrong paper, but it's, I don't have the addresses, but it's the rezoning of various parcels on Norton Avenue, as I had mentioned last week. Do I have any questions with that rezoning?
No, I think we discussed it.
Nobody from the body, nobody? Okay.
I do have a question.
Okay.
Thank you. So just for clarification, everyone that this impacts, they are all in agreement, correct? That they want this rezoned? Because at the
Yes.
planning commission meeting that I was at, the couple that own the storage place, they weren't really on board that day. And I'm just curious if we're gonna, I just want to be sure that they want this, that everyone is in agreement.
It says the properties on the north side of the street consist of Windthrow and cold storage. And they were in
Bill.
compliance. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, and I can personally attest that myself and our planning director, Trevor, personally met with all owners. As Mr. Graber brought up last week, the one property owner has passed away during August, but his son, who I believe the property is now his name, was also at that meeting. So yes, they're all in agreement. And the one gentleman who unfortunately passed away, his son was at the meeting as well. And we instructed them, told them to go take this to your attorney or accountant, whoever you want to, get back in touch with us.
I just wanted to be sure. Thank you.
I do have the addresses now, if you'd like to listen to the addresses. I did bring them to me. I didn't see the bright pink highlighter, but. Okay, any other questions from any council? No? Okay, the second one I have is a zoning map on various parcels on George Street. And this is where it would be zoned from RS 40 to single-family detached, and to RM 18 residential multifamily. This is to build 2 one-bedroom, single-story units, and to build 4 three-bedroom, two-story units on that property known as 303 George Street. Any questions?
We have the owner
Any
here.
questions, concerns? Well, but, is he allowed to speak? Okay, this is Clarence Engel.
Yes.
And he's the owner. If you'd like to state your name and address and speak to council regarding your building.
Clarence Engel, Oldsville Properties, building property 311 George Street, 303 George Street, pretty sure. And I was bringing myself here to discuss the issues of what y'all might have with zoning and not zoning or changing and this, that, and other. And I'm basically going off the same footprint that's probably a block or two away on Stanley, you know, with the duplex type deal where they're not like multi-units, just side by side. You know, so if you had any concerns, that I wanted to point out to you guys. Okay?
Would anybody like
Sure.
to ask Mr. Engel a question?
If I may.
Mr. Heidi, go ahead.
First off, thank you for coming, sir. With the design of those buildings, what kind of flood mitigation in that design? As you know, further down the way from that, as Councilor Griffin can attest, we've been slowly getting out of flooding every time it rains. With buildings of that nature, what kind of mitigation efforts have been put in? Extra storm sewers, anything?
We haven't came across that path because I don't know what the city has in plans with that or anything. So right now, this is all new to me as I'm moving forward. So if anything needs to be done, I have no problem in adjusting my plans to do that.
Thank you.
And I do have an answer for that. These parcels that Mr. Engel's talking about are not in the 100 or 500-year floodplain. They are built within 450 feet, possibly adding to the flooding issue after the structures are built and parking is developed.
Which goes to my point, is water has to go somewhere, and with new buildings like that, especially of that nature, I didn't know if there was any mitigation plans to alleviate pushing more water downwards with that type of small complex.
Mr. Trevor's not here, and I just read the report that, from the Planning Commission, so I am not able to answer that other than just read exactly what he had on here.
That's why I was glad
Yes.
this gentleman came in, because I was curious to see if there was any sort of attention paid to that kind of issue with moving water.
Well, like I said, that issue is new to me, so whatever needs to be done to resolve that, as far as when I go to build, whatever needs to be done will be done.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Engel? Oh, Mr. Jaber, go ahead.
Thank you, sir, for coming in. Thank you, Ms. Angeloff. So you are willing to work with the city to improve that property and to move on and build what you need to build?
Yes.
Okay. And how much are you looking to spend to build those homes?
Together, around about $450,000.
$450,000 of your money? All right.
Yes.
Thank you, I appreciate that, sir.
Okay. I have, don't mind. If you don't mind, do you?
Yes, pass it around.
Yeah, it's just, that's what they're gonna look like. It's two of those.
And right now the properties are vacant?
Yes.
How long has it been vacant?
There's a bar.
The bar is vacant. The pool hall I use as a storage now, and that's the one I want to turn into basically like a duplex, one bedroom unit on each side.
Mr. Griffin, that's in your ward, correct?
Yes, it is.
How do you feel about that?
Well, the property he refers to is mine,
Yes.
and, but I was grandfathered in before, you know, the ordinance changed or whatever, and,
The mitigation
the
plan.
mitigation changed. I was grandfathered in because I had already started the process, and after me, there was to be no more, you know, rental units, duplexes, or whatever, in that particular area.
Mr. Heidi, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Is there any interest at all with these two parcels of just building two smaller houses instead of duplexes?
Well, I wanted something different, something unique, you know. I wanted, like, when you look at you look at what they're gonna look like, I want something different around, you know. Bring value up to, you know, instead of just doing simple houses. When I built my house, I like, you know, like his style of house. That's what I don't.
Thank you.
Mrs. Miller?
Just a reminder, The area is zoned residential single family.
Yes.
The issue before the planning commission was a deviation from that. The planning commission voted to affirm the zoning of the area as residential single family. He's asking for a change specific to his property. The planning commission denied that. So that's the issue before council.
And this is second reading
This is
next
second
week, so we have,
Any other questions for anybody? For Mr. Engel, for anybody? No? Think
Yes.
this-
My question actually isn't for you, sir. It's for Mrs. Angela, if I may. Is there any way that you can scan and email us the planning commission's findings so that we can look
Yes.
at it?
mhm. In fact, I can do that tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
I can't scan it, no, but I'll do the old-fashioned way of making copies and put it in your mailbox.
Okay, perfect.
Unless I could have Stacy. Oh, okay, I'll give it to, she can do that.
scan it in and make it PDFs and get it out in
Okay, that would be
Thanks.
good. That would be good.
Thank you, just so that we can look over what their findings were. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No? Yes, Mr. Best, who is on the planning
We
commission.
came to this also because we had several residents that came in and were very upset that that should be changed over. So we also were looking at the neighborhood. And I also remember he said if need be, he might be willing to make some changes, which we have not seen.
Okay. Any more questions? Any more hands? Nope. Okay. Miscellaneous discussion. I really don't have anything, other than I will be working on the moratorium that we have in place right now by eliminating, well, we'll see on that, but, working on the moratorium and then working on the other half of 836.0 for the fees and the hours of operations and everything, once our safety director is back, and we'll set up a meeting for that. And I wanted to make a mention that Board of Zoning Appeals is tomorrow at 5:30 here in council chambers. Is there anything miscellaneous? No? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
second.
Second. Greer. And we are adjourned at 6:40 PM. Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't turn it off. It's still on.
I believe, finance is next. Okay, next up is Finance and Personnel with Mrs. Fry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am going to bring to order the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. The date is Monday, September 13th, 2021. It is 6:45, and we are meeting in council chambers in person. And all members of the committee are present, as well as all other council members and guests as noted on my sheet. There is no requested legislation for this evening. However, we do have a number of pending pieces of legislation. The first is a resolution certifying property tax rates. This resolution is to accept the amounts and rates of property tax as determined by the Budget Commission of Summit County and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Summit County Auditor for the year 2022 and declaring an emergency. This particular resolution is done each year. Any questions about this piece of legislation? No? All right, the second piece of legislation that is on the agenda is a resolution titled Advance of Local Taxes. This is a resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton authorizing the advance of local taxes by the county fiscal officer for the 2021 tax taxes, tax year, I'm sorry, payable in 2022 and declaring an emergency. We had some higher figures this year because of the changes in property values, which is a good thing. Do I have any questions about this piece of legislation? The next piece of legislation is an ordinance titled Appropriation Barberton Community Sports Complex. An ordinance appropriating $6,200 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Department Operations and Maintenance budget of the Parks Revolving Fund and declaring an emergency. We were told that part of this $6,200 will be used to put in a removable home run fence at the foundation fields because we will be having some women's softball leagues next summer. Any questions on this? Okay, the next ordinance, piece of legislation, is an appropriation for Lake Anna. An ordinance appropriating $2,500 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Department Operations and Maintenance budget of the Parks Revolving Fund and declaring an emergency. This particular legislation was for the purchase of the new swans for Lake Anna. And last week there was a question about the fundraising that was done for the swans. And we would like to know, Mr. Patterson?
The fundraising that covered the $2,500. The foundation, they wanted us to do a GoFundMe, but then we actually used that fund when we had donors. Actually, they covered the $2,500. They were going to pay the guy directly, but they couldn't, so they gave it to us.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
good news. Thank you so much, Mr. Patterson. Any other questions about that piece of legislation? No? Okay. The last piece of legislation that is pending is an ordinance appropriating money for an appropriation for the Mum Fest. An ordinance appropriating $2,500 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Department Operation and Maintenance budget to the Parks Revolving Fund and declaring an emergency. For some reason.
That's,
It was 7,500, wasn't it?
That too should be a
Yeah,
7.
Mine says,
Yes.
mine says 2,500.
Yes, it
and I
should be a
thought that-
7.
Yeah, I brought my old one. Okay, it's 7,500. Okay, correction made. here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is for purchase of mums which were previously donated in years past. Does anyone have any questions about this particular piece of legislation? No?
Did you have something?
I was asking, those were donated in the past and the cost of the month actually.
I couldn't hear what you said.
He said they were donated in the past, and the cost has also gone up.
The growing
Okay.
of the mums have cost.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Patterson. With these masks on, it's really, and these shields, it's hard to hear. But thank you for that explanation. Anybody have any questions about this? No? All right, then we come to miscellaneous discussion. Does anybody have any miscellaneous items relating to finance or personnel? Yes?
Thank you.
Mrs. DeBevick?
So it's not necessarily related to finance, but I just wanted to share the information with everyone, and so I can do it now, or I can do it at the end of our meeting. So it's up to you. It's just about, so I contacted, it's kind of in reference to safety, but I contacted the ODNR, and I'm going to forward everybody the information. I spoke with Doug Shepard, he's the chief park ranger, and it's regarding the safety complaints on the Towpath recently. He was really informative and provided me with an internal dispatch phone number and his direct email address. So I will email those to any of you in case you receive complaints. He also provided me with, there must have been a more recent incident than what we discussed in safety, and it was on 9/16. And he forwarded me that incident report, so I will just forward his entire email so that everyone will have his contact information. But essentially, what he shared was something that I didn't know. He shared that the homeless encampments are located actually on city property. So they don't have jurisdiction over those areas. So what he said is their jurisdiction, and he said they work really well with our police department, and our police department does a wonderful job. As a matter of fact, our police responded really quickly to this incident, and they work together, you can tell, to do the report. So I just wanted to share that I do have some contact information now, and he's really willing to listen to any of us. So I will share that with all of you and the incident report, but I didn't want you just getting some random email, and I didn't want to have to explain all that in an email, so.
Can I ask you one thing that you said about the jurisdiction? You said that they don't really have jurisdiction over the walking?
So they have the path,
Okay.
and around 3 feet on either side, is the way he explained it to me. So most of these encampments that are on the towpath are not right on the path. They're
Okay.
back in the land, back off of the path a little bit. So this particular one involved in this incident was actually on Barberton city property, he said.
Okay.
And I wasn't even referring to this, I was just asking questions, and he said, oh, you must be calling about this. I will say that when you read this, it does say that the Barberton police officer returned with the building inspector and took pictures of the homeless camps, and the officer advised the gentleman who was on duty for Metro Parks that the city of Barberton would be in the process of getting individuals living in the homeless camp to vacate the area.
Can I ask another question? Who would you call if there was an incident? Would you have to determine whether it was off the path?
No, so they
respond.
respond,
Both of them?
yeah,
or-
so very good question, actually. He said that they respond to everything. So when they get a call, it goes through Summit County Dispatch.
Okay.
They respond to all calls. So, but, so I wanted to ask him, and I didn't ask him, what distance does someone on foot patrol or bike patrol a day? Because if you're on foot and you're in Clinton,
Yeah.
how fast can you respond to an incident that's in Barberton, right? He said that they use both bike and foot patrol to patrol the area in Barberton. I do know that they patrol our area closely, similar to Akron, because Akron also has encampments. Not every area has that, but he indicated that the reason that Barberton has that, more than likely, and it's not a bad thing, it's actually a good thing that we're providing services, but they're guaranteed a meal every day based on
Salvation
what the
Army
Salvation
and
Army and our
churches.
churches. So, and the same with Akron. So that's why they're there. So he said that because of that, they patrol our area really pretty closely. But no, you would just call Summit County Dispatch and they will dispatch regardless of what area. But, they can't, once they're there and they rate the incident, I don't think they can ask them to leave from their camp because they don't have jurisdiction to do that.
However, they do call the Barberton police and alert.
The
them
Barberton
to
police
that,
were called
yeah.
also, so I don't know how that occurred, but, yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Angela.
Yes, that was a family friend of ours that had called that in. And just to let everybody know, it was just a spat between a girlfriend and boyfriend. So nobody was attacked or anything of that sort. But they were in an area where they couldn't see, they could only hear her screaming. And that's why he called 911 and the police were there. And I believe the Metro Ranger was in that area and he showed up right away too. So it wasn't anything but a little spat.
well, in the report, it does say that the officer knew the couple, and they definitely have been a problem in that area a lot of times. It's not the first call for that
I just didn't
problem.
want somebody thinking that somebody got attacked. on
No.
Anyone else have any comments or questions?
So I will forward that information to all of you. I just I didn't want you to get some random
Barberton
email.
City Council.
I know.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Carla, for that update. Since there's no other questions or comments, do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Medges made a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Do I have a
second
second? Oh, okay. Carla Bevick seconded. And we are adjourned at 6:55 PM.
Okay, that concludes our committee meetings. We'll go into committee of the whole meetings in 2 minutes.
You know, it just makes me beg the question, though. Like, what are we doing with our homeless money? So he also indicated that, like Akron, they have their own, actually, their own division to deal with the homeless. Well, I'm sure they're using, CDBG money. You know, I mean, they're probably using,
They get so much money. Like, as an example, we're gonna get 16 million.
Right.
It's on the top, it's the 20th.
Right.
Right, but they're
It
also,
makes
they're
a
also
difference.
6 times the size of us. I mean, relatively speaking, we're like one back
That's-
so.
That couple,
Yeah.
that they have been in the parking lot of Block 7, just carrying
Somebody's
on to
screaming.
beat the band.
Well,
And
as
they-
far as I know, the only
police are
thing I
being
know so
called.
far
Huh?
the CDBG is the
I'm thinking, oh my God.
services regarding.
That was the worst thing, coming in from lunch or something, and they were bringing prisoners in, and you're walking, and they're looking at you, and they go, hey lady, and I used to, oh my God, so we got to the point where, when we hit that, because we used to have to park behind the theater, we would wait, the police would kind of go like that, because they would spit on you and call you names and everything.
And actually,
It was horrible,
you know,
and they were, you're coming in the back door. Oh, Lord, that was scary.
You still call offices. I was calling.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's nothing but scary.
Is in the office working. Several agencies. It's surprising how many people aren't.
You get the big cap, it's like one stick.
It's got so many
No thanks, I get the little bitty ones.
It's really kind of sad.
Oh,
Just little
And
strips.
I don't really think that they've.
Well, I have skeletons in the living room that I'm clothing. I have some down the basement that I'm putting clothes on, so,
We're still getting.
yeah. We shopped all weekend. Let's see, Thursday, Friday, and some Saturday.
And the things that you can use.
My
it
husband
with,
thinks of these
use it
things, and then he
for,
says, can you make this? Can you do this?
are
So,
great.
yeah, we're getting it together.
Safety.
I know, and you know what? He wanted to buy that a couple years ago, and I said, no. I never tell him no. I said, that is the stupidest thing. It's not even real. It's not even, a normal skeleton is 5 foot, 6 foot. That's normal. But when you put up one, I said, no, we're not doing it. I mean, and so he was a little put out, but I said,
It's so sad.
so we've got some new school things that he's going to do, and
It's just craziness.
so the
I feel
pool is
sorry
supposed to be
for
closed this week,
the
but my new winter cover didn't come in
I
until,
really do.
because of factories and whatnot,
Your
so
kids probably just made it.
we're just kind of, he'll start work on the Mum Fest, when I'm down here working on the Mum Fest, he'll put those skeletons out, he'll get the grandkids to help him.
It's just,
and put them out.
And people not confined to anything, everything's their freedom, you know, with this,
I don't know what we're gonna do when he doesn't wanna do it anymore, because I've got thousands of dollars.
Okay, we're gonna get started.
We're just gonna put Christmas alone, thousands of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
Because I mean, it's.
And they'll pay good money for it because you've already tested it.
My insurance company just thinks we're insane. I don't have insurance on my diamonds, but I do have it on the Christmas decorations.
I don't know, it's insane.
So what's that tell you?
Priorities, priorities.
I don't know. Aren't tired of being here.
Okay, I'm calling this meeting in order. This is Barberton City Council, Committee of the Whole meeting. Today's Monday, September 20th, 2021. I call this meeting together at 7 o'clock p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and then a moment of silence for Mr. Brad Fox, who recently passed away. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you and amen.
Amen.
Citizens addressing council.
Is there anybody signed up?
Oh, I don't know. Well, Mr. Engel, did you already-
You already talked, yeah. We'll need that sheet, though. Thank you.
I should have another 5 minutes if you want.
Yeah, you can have 5 more minutes if you want.
You want to speak? Okay.
I just want to address the concern
Sure.
of the parking, like, because the only thing I found was the individual next to my property.
Yeah.
And her complaint was parking all this, and that bar has not existed since '09. And I'm not understanding why she's mad or what, like, and I went over there to her before I started all this, like 2 or 3 months or everything. She seemed to be happy with it. All of a sudden, she got mad, and I'm not, I'm like, I'm not going to change the parking, I'm not adding all this parking you think was going on, so I just wanted to let that be clear. It's not going to be what she thinks it's going to be.
Yes.
Was there any other residents?
There's only one.
So one resident?
Yes, and I think she's upset because of what happened with her and Bob.
And Boswell, that's the whole block,
Whoever
correct?
used to own the property, that's how I'm looking at it. I'm getting it I'm getting it downstream.
Have you talked to Mr. Cheatham, the private community person
Well,
behind you?
across the street, who down
No,
there?
lady behind you,
Community.
the community center?
No, I haven't spoken with her at all.
No, Mr. Cheatham. For the community side, maybe?
Yes, right
I
behind
haven't
you.
spoken with anyone
So nobody-
on that side, I have no idea how they feel or what they do.
At the last plan commission, was anybody else show up there? So there's no other concerns from other neighbors?
I don't know how much it was addressed as far as, there was no notices put out, so they might not be aware of what's going on.
Is there any notices given out to neighbors?
I don't know. I would have to check. Have to
I'm
ask.
pretty sure there was because.
I think there
Cumberland
was.
came
I
to me
think.
And was okay to see what I was doing. They asked me questions. Is it gonna be Section 8, this, that, like they asked me, I'm like, no, it's not gonna be any of those things. It's gonna be like a residential housing type deal, I said, none of that. I'm not putting no low-income housing, none of that inside the area.
Yeah, thank you for coming out and thank you for wanting to invest in the property.
We had a public hearing on both of these
You had a public
rezonings,
hearing?
so, yes.
Nobody came, so, did the resident even come today?
Yes, she did.
She came.
She did.
And that was the only one that came? Had a concern? Okay.
I think, didn't Mabel?
Yeah,
Mabel was
came
there
that day,
and,
but she's-
yes, I've talked, yes.
I don't know, go ahead.
I've talked to Mabel, and I've also talked to Joanne next door.
Yes.
Yeah, and she's opposed to it. I've talked to her, she's got problems now. She's complaining about, with Ohio Edison and the utility pole that was there before, and she wants it moved, and she's having a beef with them right now, and she wants to know what you want to do with that pool room, the storage area in there.
What-
She wants to
when I
know.
Before I started all this,
Yes.
the plans I showed the commission,
Mm-hmm.
I actually took her the blueprints and sat there for about 20 minutes showing her exactly what that building was gonna look like when I was done. So she knew before I even submitted, months before I even submitted anything to this committee.
Right.
So she knew what I was doing, and she was happy with me. She said, "Go ahead, Clarence, I support you 100% of the way." But the time I get here, she's speaking differently.
I understand that. And how can you guarantee there would be no Section 8? I mean, isn't that kind of hard to guarantee?
Wait.
Can I make a point of order?
Yeah.
Mr. President, unless you allow it, Council Rule 202 D, I believe, does not allow for debate unless the presiding officer allows. So,
Right.
I just,
Be allowed.
Yeah, go ahead.
okay.
So how could you guarantee no Section 8? I mean, if somebody applies, because I have them, and actually, I don't think it's a deterrent to me. I mean, a deterrent, to me, it's guaranteed income, because when I first built the place, nowhere in Barberton would accept it, They wouldn't, nobody wanted Section 8, but you go now, it's all over the city because of the financial situation with different people and incomes and stuff. They jump right on it now because it's guaranteed income, with a portion that's paid for. So that's kind of hard to say that if someone applies to rent and they have Section 8 approved and they're good tenants, I don't see how you could say they can't stay there.
As me being an owner, I have that right to say yes or no.
Yeah, you have the right to say yes or no, but I mean, to me, it's a deterrent, because of location and, the rentals around there. We have so many, and that's the problem is with the two-family. We're not saying you can't build a rental. You can build a house and you can rent it to anybody, but it's the idea that when you have it combined and the traffic and things that a lot of people can't control who visits them. They can't control the people, friends of friends, and that's what usually I run into because, well, I don't know him, but he's a friend of a friend of a friend, so you can get into a lot of trouble with the two-story, to connect it, so you'd rather have them single family if you could, That's what I would recommend myself.
And please keep in mind, what's coming before council is a rezoning only. He's asking for, to be rezoned from single-family detached to residential multifamily.
Right.
That's what's going to come to us, is the rezoning. Everything else is not, I mean, you can listen to it and understand that, but what we're going to concentrate on is the rezoning of that piece of property. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Engel.
No problem.
Are you done?
I'm done.
You gotta
Oh.
stay with that,
Oh,
your
I'm not done
report.
with, I haven't given my report yet, you haven't?
Go for it.
Oh, okay, well, call on it, okay. Thank you, Mr. President. The Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee met this evening, 6:15. All members were present, all council was present. We are continuing a piece of legislation request from Mr. Heidig, requesting legislation to amend ordinance 53, 2012, and/or chapter 63604B, and to add at the end of section 836.04B, no new licenses shall be issued effective upon the date that it passes. If it's passed in 3 readings, that will be October 25th. Mr. Heidick's also asking for no emergency language on it, so then it would go into effect 30 days after October 25th. Mr. Greer, there was lots of discussion about this, and zoning, Mrs. Miller had made a point, I didn't know how long it was, but Mrs. Miller made a point that there hadn't been an application in the 14 years.
Only one.
Only one application in the 14 years. So our zoning, when it comes to the arcades, are very strict. Second piece of legislation I have is the zoning map for Norton Avenue. And we had discussion about one of the owners of the property, if he was on board, and his father had passed away a few months ago, and that was inherited to him, and he's on board with the rezoning of those parcels on Norton Avenue. The second pending legislation is the George Street rezoning from single-family detached to RM18 residential multifamily. Mr. Engel had discussed his intentions, and that these two will have their second reading next week. The amusement device will have the first reading on 9/27, and no miscellaneous discussion, but I did make a mention that the Board of Zoning Appeals is tomorrow at 5:30 here in council chambers, and with that, I pass.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say, I don't think we took roll.
Oh, we didn't, see?
No.
And you didn't announce me. I knew you didn't announce me.
Come on, Mr. President.
We don't, what, roll for the whole thing?
Roll call.
We don't need to do that on this meeting.
It's on the,
I know, but it doesn't,
Okay.
it's not needed on this meeting. It's needed on legislation meetings,
Okay.
but not this meeting.
okay,
All right.
fine.
If I may, Mr. President?
Huh?
If I may?
Yeah.
That's why there was no roll call last week when you excused me for my
Right.
marriage ceremony.
Right.
Thank you.
That's right.
Sorry, I just wanted to put out that.
Very nice party you had, too.
Megan?
Okay, next up is streets, sidewalks, and lighting with Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Street, sidewalk, and lighting met today, September 20th, 2021, here in the council chambers at 6 p.m. All committee members and council members were present, and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, there was no request for legislation. There was a few topics for miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Tracy gave us an update for the 2021 road program. Just a synopsis of that is the construction of concrete's about 90-95% done throughout the city. Some of the A-match projects are just now wrapping up. Most of them got the top coat put on. Markings are temporary now for these roads, but they'll soon to be final. Side streets, there was two roads today that were getting their first layer of asphalt. And construction's just continuing throughout the city for the road program. Second thing that we talked about, Mr. Jaber brought up discussion topic of changing the street sweeping schedule around a little bit, the possibility of it to coincide with the trash nights. And Mr. Tracy, and we had general discussion throughout council. Mr. Tracy gave a little bit of feedback and about how that program's run, and there was some feedback from other council members and some suggestions, so I'm gonna get with Mr. Tracy this week and dig a little deeper and see what we can possibly, what changes could take place if they would benefit, what's the cons of changing anything around. Mr. Jaber also asked about lighting update throughout the city. Mr. Tracy provided an update, an explanation saying that we're part of ESIP's program, that's ESIP currently, and we get a lower rate than we would get if we updated our lights. Mrs. DeBevick pointed out that changing over to LED is better for the environment. And I mentioned that if the program ended, we would be playing catch-up, and Mr. Tracy said that that's on the agenda if that program ever goes away. So we had a motion to adjourn at 6:12, and with that, I pass.
Thank you. To clarify that roll call, I was doing the roll call during virtual meetings. So we all knew who was there and made sure they were there. That's why I did it then. But for the committee of the whole meetings, you do not need a roll call, only the legislation, okay?
I just saw that we had skipped over it, and I thought I'd bring it up.
Okay. All right, next up is city utilities and Mrs. Coburn.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met September 13th, 2021 in council chambers, all members and guests as recorded. We had no new request for legislation. We had a pending legislation that was voted on last week, and we had no miscellaneous discussion. So with that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is public welfare and safety, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met last week, September 13th, 2021, at 6:06 PM here in council chambers. We had one request for legislation, and did we pass that?
It was voted
Yeah, it was voted on.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I thought so. We had no new requests for legislation, but we did have a pending piece of legislation, which was an appropriation to the fire department, and we passed that. We also had some miscellaneous discussion regarding the safety on the Towpath, and I provided everyone this evening during finance with an update. I did not send an email to ODNR, but I did reach out to some county metro parks, and I will forward everyone that information. And with that, safety will pass.
Thank you. Next up is rules, marketing, and development, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met on September 13th in council chambers. All members present and others guests as noted. We had no requests for legislation to call for. We had miscellaneous discussion. Mrs. DeBevick talked about expired goods on the RV that could have been used before the expiration date. It was recommended that goods be distributed before they expire. A motion was made to adjourn. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. Next up is environmental health and social services, Mr. Draver.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met September 20th, 2021 at 6:13. All members present, also other council members also noted. We had no request for legislation and no miscellaneous discussion. And we adjourned at 6:14, and with that, I pass, sir.
Thank you. Next up is city properties, parks, and recreation with Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties, Parks and Recreation met September 13th, 2021, 6 PM in council chambers. All members present, all guests noted. Topics of discussion, we had a few requests for legislation. All three would be referred to finance. The first one is a letter from Director Patterson requesting legislation to appropriate $6,200 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Revolving Fund budget to cover expenses at the Barberton Community Sports Complex with emergency wording. This is for home run fencing, which is retractable to get women's fast-pitch softball and tournaments. The second piece was a letter from Director Patterson requesting legislation to appropriate $2,500 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Revolving Fund budget to cover expenses for Lake Anna. Emergency wording requested. This was for new swans, and as the director indicated, the collections could not be paid directly, so it must come through us. And the third and final piece is a letter from Director Patterson requesting legislation to appropriate $7,500 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Revolving Fund budget to cover expenses incurred for the Mum Festival. Emergency wording was requested. This is for purchase of mums as they were previously donated, and the cost has gone up. Miscellaneous discussion, I passed out a residential property initiative and accepted no comments until next meeting. I have given them to the administration, and I met with the planning department this afternoon and got some very good notes from them, and I do look forward to hearing any more notes from the body and from the administration. And with that, I pass.
Thank you. Go
I have
ahead.
a question. Did you say you distributed the notes to all of us or just
Yeah.
to the administration?
No, we all got them.
week. I don't know if
I
that happened.
put it on everybody's desk last week.
Yeah, you.
Oh, last week?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, no.
Okay, I thought you meant tonight.
No,
I thought,
this
oh, I didn't get
afternoon,
anything.
this
Okay,
afternoon, I
I'm
met
sorry.
with the planning director and the planning department and with their feedback. So
Okay.
I look forward to hearing some more
misunderstood you.
there.
I thought you said today, and I thought I didn't get any.
No, I met with
Sorry.
them today.
I'm mucking up the meeting.
It's okay, it's your turn.
I know.
Okay, thank you. Well, you're up.
I know. Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight, September 13th, Monday, at, in council chambers, and the meeting began at 6:45 PM. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members, and guests is noted on my agenda sheet. We had no new requests for legislation, however, we do have pending legislation. The first is a resolution titled Certifying Property Tax Rates, a resolution accepting the amounts and rates of property taxes determined by the Budget Commission of Summit County and authorizing the necessary tax levies and certifying them to the Summit County Auditor for the year 2022 and declaring an emergency. As I stated during the meeting, this is done each year. The second piece of legislation that is pending is a resolution titled Advance of Local Taxes. A resolution of the Council of the City of Barberton authorizing the advance of local taxes by the County Fiscal Office for the 2021 tax year payable in 2022 and declaring an emergency. I noted that the figures for this year's advance were higher than last, and that was due to changes in property values. The next piece of legislation was an ordinance titled Appropriation Barberton Community Sports Complex. This was in the amount of $6,200, which Mr. Heidig just went over in his report. This is for a home run fence at the sports complex because we will be hosting women's softball leagues. The next piece of legislation was also referred from Parks, and Mr. Heidig already explained this as well. It is an appropriation for Lake Anna in the amount of $2,500 for the Swans. And Mr. Heidig explained that we did get enough funds from the fundraising for the payment for the Swans, but because we cannot pay them directly, we're going this route. The next piece of legislation was also referred from Parks. This is titled Appropriation Mumfest. It is an ordinance appropriating $7,500 from the unappropriated item of the Parks Revolving Fund to the Parks Department Operations and Maintenance budget of the Parks Revolving Fund and declaring an emergency. As Mr. Heidig just explained, this is for purchase of mums, which were previously donated in years past. Under miscellaneous discussion, Mrs. DeBevick informed us of her call to Doug Shepard from Metro Parks or ODNR?
Metro
Parks. Okay. And she has contact information in the form of a phone number and email, and she will be forwarding that to all council members. She found out some interesting things, one of them being that the towpath and 3 feet on either side is what the Metro Parks is responsible for. They work with our local police department and work really well with them. The problem that had occurred, she had a police report from it, was of a couple arguing in a campsite, which was off the towpath. They do have bike and foot patrols on the towpath, and when we have those numbers, we can just call Summit County Dispatch and somebody will come out to handle whatever is going on there. And with that, Finance and Personnel will pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. When it comes to the towpath, that's heavily used. We've got about a mile in Barberton, but we were the first first community to really branch everything together. So now you can go from Cleveland all the way down past Zor. But we want to make sure the towpath is utilized and that it's as safe as possible. So if it's a serious issue, definitely just simply call 911, and that'll go to our dispatch center, but they will work with Summit County and Metro and ODNR. But yeah, some of those off-site areas along the towpath are owned by, the city owns some are privately held, the county, things like that. So there's a lot of different jurisdictions as you go through down the towpath. But I definitely want to make sure that everyone is safe as can be. So as mentioned, the street resurfacing programs are continuing with each program in different phases, but should be wrapping up here the next few weeks here. So things are weather permitting. I'll get to that in just a minute. But things are coming together very nicely. Lots of changes associated with COVID-19, including the increase in cases throughout the world and nationwide and here locally. Recent news on vaccines and boosters, and we continue to work with all of our partners, whether public or private, on that as well. And as I was sitting here, I received an email from Summit County Health. This Friday, their clinic at the health department will be open for first or second dose vaccinations only. They will receive a $100 incentive for that. They will not administer boosters or third round shots, however you want to phrase that, for this Friday. So this Friday, first or second dose vaccinations only for anyone. So you don't have to be from Summit County. Some more on that as that continues to unfold. We're keeping our eye on the weather forecast for the rest of the week. There's a possibility of heavy rains, which could lead to localized flooding or ponding. So, yeah, fingers crossed. The river levels are down pretty good because of the humidity we've had over the last month or so. But still, we pretty much handle what falls on Barberton, but we've got 4 tributaries that come into town. So the scary part is when, a day or two later, when we get all the water through those tributaries from up north, from that continental divide that flows into Barberton. That's what really taxes the system. So we're keeping an eye on that, and our crews have been out, making sure that the inlets are free of debris and open, and that water can easily pass through. Busy week and weekend here. I invite everyone to come to the Walk of Fame this Friday at 5 o'clock down here in front of the theater, followed by Tuscany on Tusk, Barberton football game, of course, and of course the Mum Festival. So a lot of things going on here in town. Going to be very, very busy. So we'll see how the forecast holds up. But these events are a great testament of all the good things that are going on in our community. So we knew it was going to be a busy month, starting with Labor Day, and this is kind of wrapping it up. So I invite everybody out because it's going to be a very busy but very good time this week. So, yes, ma'am.
The foundation's birthday is also.
Foundation's birthday. We'll be celebrating that at Tuscany on Tusk, 25 years, with some special things planned. And it's really neat to see these events come back since they were canceled last year due to COVID. And it's really awesome to see people kind of floating around town, if you will. So they'll come to the Walk of Fame, get a bite to eat, attend Tuscany on Tusk, go over to the football game, and then come back, and then they're out all weekend as well, so, for the Mum Festival. So a lot of great things going on in the community here. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Okay, anything from council members? Mr. Colburn?
The Downtown Merchants Association has a quilt for raffle tickets for the Mum Fest that will be available at the festival. It's a double bed size quilt with 25 years of Mum t-shirts.
Do you know who made it?
I do.
And I donated the 25
Yeah.
t-shirts.
It was
for you.
a
That's great.
multi-person adventure there.
There you go. Anyone else? Mr. Greer?
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to let everybody know that the Parks Department is looking for, or Tammy Simmons at the Parks Department is looking for volunteers for the Mum Fest still. So if you got some time, just send her an email or send parks@cityofbarberton.com an email if you want to volunteer some hours.
Okay, anyone else? Anyone? Go for it, Mr. Tracy.
I want to mention after a long search of sourcing the LED light bulbs for the festoon lighting. We were able to finally get our hands on some, and they made improvements to those, replacing a bunch of bulbs this week, so all the festoon lighting is up and operational for the upcoming festivities.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 7:28.
I'm still doing